And these are just assumptions that we have as a collective society. The idea that you climb the ladder to success. The thing is, you do this a few times, but you realize that at the top of every ladder is another ladder. Like, it really doesn't end. And so we encourage people to ask the question, who built this ladder and who does it serve? There was a point where college did work as a solution. Today, 53% of Americans go to college. Loads of student debt that'll be a burden for the rest of your life. Today, with AI, those entry-level jobs are going to be wiped out. They're already being downsized. I love the idea of somebody who's an expert generalist. Somebody who basically understood a broad base of things and then, was detail-oriented enough that they could go drill down in any issue they needed to, but could see how the things connected together. And that kind of person is always valuable. Have is a byproduct of do. Targeting the have, like making that your focus, is a huge mistake. It's the greatest manifestation of masculinity is the ability to say no. I will not do that. There are basically more slaves alive today than have ever existed on Earth. They just don't know they're slaves, but they do recognize their dependence. Their dependence on the...
Welcome back to G'day Bitcoin. Joining us today is Matt Smith, a serial entrepreneur, college dropout living in Uruguay, setting up a regenerative farm. Matt Smith, co-author of a life-changing book titled The Preparation, How to Become Confident, Competent and Dangerous. Co-authored with his son Maxim and Doug Casey, it's a guide for young men on how to become an entrepreneur and not stuck in the rat race, to become great, the modern-day Renaissance man. Matt, in a recent interview, you said, "It always looks like a failure until it becomes a success. Everyone thought I was screwing up until I became rich. I mean, that's how it works. The old way, it no longer works." So, Matt, what is the old playbook? Why doesn't it work anymore? And what's the new playbook look like? What should people be doing instead?
Well, the question is, did the old playbook actually ever work? I'm not sure. Some of the things we do in the book is try and dispel myths about how the world works. And these are just assumptions that we have as a collective society. And one of them is the idea that you climb the ladder to success. It starts when you're before you go to college, in school, where you are supposed to pursue good grades. And, if you do the right things and you please the right people and you get, test well, then you get to a point where you're at the top of the ladder. Now you get to go to a good college. And this is how people believe life really works. So now you're at the top of that ladder. Now you go and you climb the next ladder. The thing is, you do this a few times, but you realize that at the top of every ladder is another ladder. Like, it really doesn't end. And so we encourage people to ask the question, who built this ladder and who does it serve? To whose benefit accrues from my climbing of this ladder? And I would say it does not in any way benefit to the individual that climbs it. I think of all the remarkably successful people I know, I don't know any that did it by climbing ladders. Not to say they didn't climb at any point in their life, but their success is in no way attributed to ladders. And so I think that's one of the big myths that we try and dispel. And I think that there was a point where college did work as a solution because college it differentiated you from most people. Today, 53% of Americans go to college. So it's like the vast, if you are if you have a pulse, basically, you're expected to go to college anymore, and you will get accepted at one or another, and they'll load you up with, in the US at least, loads of student debt that'll be a burden for the rest of your life. So I think that burden of debt is something that made it different than before. And the fact that it's not rare anymore to have a college degree makes it different now. So there was a point where I think it probably was more valuable than it is now, but now I think it's really hard to justify the time and capital required to do it. And I think there's even worse parts of it. I mean, you subject yourself to further indoctrination about certain ideas, good ideas, what's right think and what's wrong think. That's a very dangerous environment to be in, because it actually does affect you, even if you don't think it does. It really does change you. I mean, we're humans. We're weirdly shaped by those around us. I mean, I talk about Rene Girard and his ideas of that humans are the only species that doesn't really know what they want. And in order to figure out what they want, they look to others and what others want around them to figure out what they want. And that's a recipe for disaster in general. It's called, these mimic desires that we all end up having if we're around, if we're around certain people. Actually, whatever people are around, we are likely to start to want the things that they want. If you have a bunch of friends and you go golfing every Saturday, you're going to be talking about buying new golf clubs. It's just what's going to happen. Anyway, so I think that's the old way doesn't really work anymore at all. And you see this by the fact that the unemployment rate among recent college graduates is significantly higher than the unemployment rate of other populations in the United States now. I think that makes it clear that it doesn't work anymore. I think that AI, I think we're already seeing the effect of that. I think it's part of the reason why the unemployment rate is so much higher. But I think the unpredictable nature of the future today with AI makes it so that the idea of studying something like finance, which was the path to, the most lucrative career over the last 20 years, is now actually very risky, because those entry-level jobs are going to be wiped out. They're already being downsized. And so, yeah, it doesn't really work anymore. And what has always worked, though, is to become a competent, resourceful individual. Like, that person does well. And, I've hired thousands of people in my life. I've had thousands of employees. And I could tell you that, I never looked at college degree, but I would test for things like resourcefulness. I love the idea of somebody, the name I came up for him was an expert generalist. Somebody who basically understood a broad base of things and then, was detail oriented enough that they could go drill down in any issue they needed to, but could see how the things connected together. And that kind of person is always valuable. And I think the book, the preparation, is designed to give a young man loads of experiences, unique experiences that in total end up something like a hero's journey, which I think every man craves. And I think no man is satisfied until he has it. And so it does that, but it also gives you an understanding of how so many different things work, that you will not approach the world as an idiot who basically only understands how to get food by Uber Eats, or only understands, you're so overly specialized that you don't understand anything outside of what's absolutely necessary for you to know. And so the whole world is open to you. You have skills and competencies to interact with that world successfully.
Yeah, I agree. And what I was saying in the intro, being one of the most unique books that I've ever read, the way that it's written, there's like part one and part two. And part one lays out, I guess, the philosophy behind it. Then part two is the practicality. I think let's start a little bit with part two, and then we'll come back to part one. I've got some amazing quotes that I've highlighted, but it goes through these different cycles, is how you define them. And am I correct that they're 3 months or 16 weeks per cycle?
Yeah, it's 3 months. It's 3 months, so 12 weeks.
12 weeks. And some of the most exciting ones are fighter, pilot, rancher, EMT and stuff. There's a whole lot to go through. I guess, why did you choose what you've chosen? What did you choose? And I guess, what are the lessons that a young man, or any man really, could go through? You're saying people in their 70s have been going through it. I think if people looked back at their life and they just went through those cycles, they'd be like, that's a life fulfilled, let alone starting your life with that. I think that's incredible. But I guess, why specifically those cycles, and what's the takeaways for someone going through those cycles?
Well, yeah, we chose 16. I think we could have chosen a different 16 and still made it work. It's not like there's something special about these 16, but the combination of them all together is what really makes it really, really interesting. I mean, you will be the most interesting person for sure if you do this. And I can say this, my son was our guinea pig for the last 2 years in doing all of it, making sure, first of all, that my primary concern, the reason I wrote the book, was because my son had a problem at 17. He didn't want to go to college. He had a lot of anxiety about what to do. I mean, it was really messing with him. I mean, I could feel in him the problems, I could feel the struggle he was having with it. And so I felt compelled to get back with Doug Casey and pick up this book he'd always wanted me to write with him for the last 12 years. He'd been trying to convince me to write, which he called The Renaissance Man, although young men today don't know what that even means. So I said, that can't be the title. They don't get it. They don't even get it. And they haven't had exposure to it. So when Doug first explained to me the book, how all these cycles tie together, he said, the book is about the 3 most important verbs in every language. He said, it's be, do, and have. At first, when he told me this, I didn't even understand what he was talking about, actually. Like, can you explain more? And he said, I'm not really sure. So he kind of left it to me to try and figure it out really over the last dozen years. And I think I pretty obviously I had to really get it before we could write the book, but fundamentally have is what motivates most people. And it makes sense. Why? Because, we get our wants from others around us. Those wants are generally external things. So those are things that you can have. They're possessions. So we want a nice car, we want a nice house, we want a beautiful spouse, stuff like that. These have, and especially in our consumer culture, this has been just amped up to 11, the haves. The problem is nobody ever explains that have is a byproduct of do. It's a consequence of it. And so targeting the have, like making that your focus, is a huge mistake, especially for a young man, but really for all of us, because it's just a byproduct. And there's nothing wrong with having a lot of stuff. I have a lot of shit, but it was a byproduct of doing. And for a young man, this is good news, because doing is what you're best suited for as a young man. You have literally unlimited amounts of energy. You have no liabilities. There's no restrainers. I mean, as you go through life, you build up responsibilities, like things you just got to take care of. I can't just walk away and be gone for 3 months or studying Muay Thai in Thailand. That's not going to work with my obligations.
I feel you on that. The joys of growing up.
The older you get, man, they just stack up, and they're choices. They're responsibilities we chose to take on, but they're important to us, and so we can't simply abandon them. But when you're a young man, you have unlimited energy. You're open to novelty in a way that you will not be as you get older. You just start closing yourself off more and more. It's a mistake to do it too much, but it's just natural that it happens. And so the book is the do, which is what most of the book is about, is what exactly to do, is the operative. This is where a young man's power is. If it's focused in the right way, it can produce remarkable results. But the do isn't the most important. The most important is be. Be is all that really matters. And so to get there, to explain the be, to try and get to even enter that conversation with young people, we actually have them do an exercise that might seem trivial to most people, but I actually think every person should do this, not just young men, is to develop a personal code. And a personal code is 3 parts to it. Let's explain briefly. The first part is that I hate rules. Like, I'm an anarchist, I don't like regulations at all. I don't like rules. However, I had realized a long time ago that the rules I set for myself were powerful and useful and worked toward me getting done what I wanted to get done and being the person I wanted to be, more importantly.
If you've still got your Bitcoin on an exchange, or you're looking to take your Bitcoin security to the next level, I've partnered with the Bitcoin Way. They offer live help for setting up cold storage, running your own node, keeping your Bitcoin private, planning for the future, using multi-sig, and so much more. They never touch your keys. They will not touch your coins. Instead, they'll show you how to buy and keep them safe. If you want to make your Bitcoin setup safer, you can book a free 30-minute call and have a chat with them. Safe Dina Moose, the author of the Bitcoin Standard, Natalie Brunel, Preston Pish, and so many more recommend the professional IT cybersecurity team. Couple of outstanding things here. You can see they've been featured in Forbes, Bitcoin Magazine, Bitcoin Prague, Zero Hedge, Simply Bitcoin, the Bitcoin Safe Dean, the Bitcoin Standard podcast with Safe Dina Moose, Bitcoin News, obviously Gday Bitcoin for a long time. They're the world experts in helping people become self-sovereign. It's not just about protecting your Bitcoin stash. Yes, they will help you do that in a very easy to understand step-by-step process. But from there, they can help you secure your data. They are your personal cybersecurity IT experts. And then step number 3 is getting a second passport, a Plan B residency. The team, very cheap, very affordable for people that are looking to take their sovereignty to the next level. You can find out more about their services. When you first log in to their website as well, they have got a free 3-minute quiz to allow you to check if you are doing your cybersecurity, your setup correctly. I urge everyone to jump onto the bitcoinway.com. I have put a link into the description for everyone. Could not recommend them enough. I've used them personally before I ever partnered with them for the channel, friends and family. They asked me to help them out. I'm like, go to the world experts. That is the Bitcoin Way. So reach out to the Bitcoin Way today.
And so what we ask a young person to do is just to look at pay attention essentially in their life and notice the moments that they feel small. Like, what did they do that caused them to feel small? What things do they do that might make them feel a little bit ashamed, even if the rest of the world has no knowledge of this stuff? So to write those things down and stop doing them. And this is it seems trivial, but it's super important, because this is actually the formation of self-esteem. Because this is now, you're not going with the flow anymore. You're actually drawing a line in the sand and saying, no, I don't do that kind of thing. And, it could be, from being a liar, from lying. It could be bad habits like sitting and scrolling on your phone all day, whatever it might be. And they're different for everybody. And only you would know what yours are, the things that make you feel small. But just deciding then that I'm not going to do those things anymore develops this like beachhead where a great self can be built upon. And so you have to start there, these basic rules. From there, what we do is we expose people to the ancient virtues. And surprisingly, most young people have no exposure to them whatsoever. Virtues are not taught in school anymore. At least not.
Why do you reckon that is?
It's not useful for the school to teach you virtues. I think the whole system is designed to make you a cog in a wheel. Okay, they want you to do your part where you're creating enough value that it supports the system, and they don't want you to really be a rabble rouser. They certainly don't want you to be the kind of person who really knows who they are and believes in virtues and is able to draw a line in the sand and say no, which is the most masculine thing. That's the greatest manifestation of masculinity, I think, is the ability to say no. I will not do that. I don't care what you do. I'm not doing that. I'm not going to participate. And but that starts with being. Being is the key. And so the virtues, being exposed to the virtues, and we ask them to pick some that call to them. And we ask little kids. Do you have any kids, by the way?
No, I don't.
Okay. So like when you're really little, people ask you like what you want to be when you grow up, and the answers are Spider-Man or a fireman,
astronaut.
An astronaut. Those are the most common ones, or Superman or whatever. And the thing is that like for what the kid is saying is he's saying virtues. He's saying the things that he thinks are virtuous. He's not saying a job, but but to him, these are symbols of some virtues in his mind. And as you get older, that we still ask that same question of young men, but the question becomes a lot more serious, and answers like astronaut or things that they might associate with virtues seem absurd, and they are expected to be a lot more reasonable and to choose something that will get them to a job. And I think that's totally the wrong question. The question you should, as the kid gets more mature and is no longer thinking of astronauts and firemen, the question should be, what kind of man do you want to become? Because that gets them back to these virtues, gets them back to these things that are truly motivating for a young man. Like they want that. They want to be somebody, and everyone knows in their heart, to be somebody, you have to do something worthy. And so that's what they want. That's what they really want. So ask people the right question is very important. So anyway, you have the virtues in there, which some of them will call to them, some of them won't. That's fine. Pick the ones that do. And then after that, they start listing their actual competencies, which if you actually exercise, if you do what's in the preparation, they stack up super fast. And then with that, I mean, you become a whole person. You become a unique individual. You're no longer going with the flow. You are a different individual. You are not the same as your peers. In fact, your peers will likely change utterly in the process.
There's one quote that you had, and it's sort of coming back to the virtues. What we do when fate comes in is completely up to us. We don't have control over the world, but we always have total personal agency. And whatever fate may bring, we have the opportunity to be virtuous in our thoughts and actions. Our reactions are totally up to us. Our fate, as harsh as it may appear at times, is always an opportunity for personal agency and growth. A more fatty love of fate is a simple idea with profound implications. When people go through a program such as the preparation compared to the school system, the way that I see it, because I left high school halfway through year 11, we go to year 12 here in Australia. I just didn't see the point of being indoctrinated so much, and I just because of circumstance and stuff, I'm like, I want to be free in my life. I need to be able to make money. So I left school, started an apprenticeship, as getting like $4.06 an hour or something. And I'm like, this is absolutely ridiculous. I'm going to go do something else. And I didn't really have that virtual guiding principles. And my friend group wasn't great either. So I lacked that. But compared to, and then developed it obviously, and we can go into like by doing things very much like a lot of the things out of the book is what I started to do, and to be able to stack up and then to be able to self-reflect and gain those virtues. But if I was just to go along with the normal grind and go through school and then college and stuff, there is so much indoctrination. But I really feel like what you're saying is a cog in the wheel. It almost feels like they're just trying to breed like a modern day monetary slave.
Well, as a Bitcoin guy, especially, that must seem super obvious. I totally agree. It is a form of. I think there are basically more slaves alive today than have ever existed on Earth. They just don't know they're slaves, but they do recognize their dependence. Their dependence on the system. Their dependence on their paycheck. That they. How do you get a lot of good people to do bad things, as we saw during COVID? Well, their paycheck is dependent on it, and they've got a mortgage, and they got, just following orders.
Free donuts.
Yeah, exactly. It worked. So I think people are deeply dependent. The system creates dependency, and our program is designed to create individuals. And when we refer to dangerous, competent, and dangerous, really what we do mean. We use dangerous in a couple of ways for a couple of reasons. One, it appeals to all men. I don't care who you are. That idea of being dangerous appeals to you, and even though you can't define it. Now, you could, but even undefined, it appeals to you. And so trying to obviously cater to the audience in that. But in practicality, we do believe in, obviously, you should be able to defend yourself and others from a physical standpoint. And that's a big part of the preparation. But beyond that, what's really dangerous is someone who knows who they are and can think for themselves, somebody who is independent. And that's the goal of the book, is to create individuals like that.
Yeah, I think that book paired with a Bitcoin standard, it's just really life-shaping. So let's talk about a couple of these cycles. And I want to stick on the dangerous one for a couple of reasons. The dangerous cycle, most specifically, is the fighter cycle, going off to, say, Thailand to be able to learn Muay Thai for 3 months. I so wish I had that opportunity to be able to do that. I go boxing twice a week, go to the gym 5 days a week, etc. But with responsibilities, the life, the company, everything like that, like you're saying, I just can't get up and go away for 3 months. But that appeal of being dangerous to the system, but also just to be able to be competent if a situation was to arrive, I think that's very important. And even if no situation ever arrives, just the way that you hold yourself, present yourself, the way that you can walk through the world with intention, I think that's really incredible. I guess, what was the reason that you guys put the fighter cycle in there? And not just like the physicality of going and training in Muay Thai, for example, but there's also like an academic part of it. It's not like you're going to pick up this book, you're just going to do the fun stuff, go be an EMT, fight fires, pack mules and stuff, get your pilot's license, fly through the sky. Yes, that's a large component of it. That's the practicality. But then there's also the serious study that comes with it. But yeah, if we can stick on like the fighter cycle and how that can help someone become dangerous, a weapon.
Well, the way it may become dangerous is because I think the biggest thing that comes out, obviously you have some practical skills that come out of it. And my son is, and we encourage people to be doing martial arts all the time anyway. And specifically, I like BJJ simply because you can go almost anywhere and you can find a gym. So, wherever you are, and they're pretty welcoming to new people going in there. And it's a very practical martial art. So, we encourage that as kind of, that you should be doing that along the way. Because, and there's lots of things beyond these. Maybe I should explain. The cycles are 16 cycles, essentially modeling a 4-year college. Supposed to be 4 years. Most, only, I don't know, what is it, 70% of Americans graduate in 4 years. But let's assume 4 years. And we break it down into 16 quarters. And so in each quarter, we call a cycle. Each cycle has an anchor activity. That anchor activity is like the fighter cycle. You're studying Muay Thai. or getting your pilot's license or getting your EMT or learning to sail in the Falkland Islands and through the Strait of Magellan, which is like definitely throwing you in the deep end as far as sailing goes. It certainly was for my son. He'd never sailed at all before, but he did that one and came back different.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I bet.
Yeah. So, so there's the anchor course. And then on top of that, academics are super important to Doug, especially. I mean, Doug was a real stickler about the academics. You know, as a college dropout, he went to Georgetown. Okay. I'm a college dropout. Both of us think college is unnecessary, but he puts a lot more emphasis on academics than I do. And I think he's right. I do think he's right that they should be included in there, and they are. So we basically try to have the academic program as much as possible be related to what they're studying at the time, the things they're doing in the physical world, because college is all abstract. I mean, you learn abstract concepts. You don't learn how to do anything really. I mean, if you're in engineering school, maybe you do, right? But I mean, for most parts, you're just learning ideas. And so those ideas, you don't have any understanding of the utility of those ideas. Like, are they actually useful in the real world or not? Yeah, it's hard to know. So we try and combine them. Like, it's not the fighter cycle, but just as an example, one of the cycles is you learn to cook in Italy for a month. And you're in one of my favorite cities, Florence, which is surrounded by history and art and beauty. And of course, you take advantage of that time to study things academically that are very related to where you are and what you're doing anyway for this cooking cycle. So the academics are layered in that way. And there's reading, of course, that's part of that too. And the other two components of a cycle is that we have a whole list of other activities that we think you should get exposure to. Some are going to really like, you're going to love and you're going to continue on with. Some of them you might do just once and be like, okay, you know, that one's not that big of a deal for me, but it's opened, at least expanded your horizons. And it's, again, taking advantage of this fact that you have lots of time, lots of energy. Novel activity is good. You meet different people. You learn about the world. We encourage as many people to spend, we actually have, depending upon the cycle, a certain number of hours weekly allocated for stuff like that, actually. And then finally, reflection and accountability. And my son, for instance, has been publishing on Substack every week since maybe about a month in what he got done that week. And it started off as this
I'll link that below for everyone.
Yeah, you should check it out. I mean, it's our version of proof of work, right?
Love it.
So you can see exactly what he's done over the last couple of years. And he's actually started off as a very crude list of just what he got done to hold himself accountable. Eventually started getting thousands of people following him. And so he has lots of people encouraging him along in it. And his writing has become much more interesting, much more thoughtful, and competent. He's become a competent writer along the way too. So there's a lot of benefits to that part, but that accountability and reflection is really key to learning as far as I'm concerned. So that's what a cycle contains. Each cycle has a theme. So you have the fighter cycle, you've got the medic cycle where you become an EMT, you have the sailor cycle where you learn to sail, you have the pilot cycle where you learn to fly a plane. The cooking cycle in Italy, I've already talked about. You have, there's one where you operate heavy equipment. There's a school, and I believe it's in Florida, where you actually learn to operate all the big machines. I mean, not some of the crazy cranes, but basically all the bulldozers and backhoes and all that kind of stuff, and become certified in it. So you could pursue that economically as a job. I mean, a lot of these are designed so that these anchor courses do make you economically viable. Like, you could turn them into a career if you wanted to, maybe not as, high earning career in all cases, but it's not like there are ways then that you can fund your way through this entire thing. Like Max, for instance, that's my son. He got his EMT, and then because of his Substack, somebody reached out to him who owns this company where they basically contract with the government in the U.S. to fight wildfires. And so he was looking, and he operates these ambulance crews on the wildfires. And so he offered it. He said, hey, riding on an ambulance, you don't earn any money. Normally it's like minimum wage. You don't want to do that stuff. That's crappy work. Come work on the wildfires. And he got paid $600 a day for doing that.
Wow.
Which is, I was his age, I was in the Army, and I think my take home pay for the month was about $600. Okay. So, I mean, it's pretty good money. And so with things like that, and he gets thrown these different opportunities because people see what he's doing and say, hey, you might want to try this. And he worked on a geophysics crew for a company that was looking for gold in Nevada for a while. Not quite making $650 a day, but making still good money along the way. So, and in the beginning, he started working at Office Depot. I don't know if you have Office Depot there, but it's just this office supply store. It's like a total shit retail job. I mean, under fluorescent lights all day, just terrible. But he was working his way through the program.
Yeah. And even with, say, like I define that if someone was stuck there potentially as a bullshit job, and the way that I define a bullshit job is the job may be great for somebody else, but when you're there, you just want to be somewhere else. You'd rather be outside, you'd rather be flying or whatever. But while he was attending that, he was probably learning like sales, customer service, product merchandising, advertising, even to an extent. It's not like he went there and he's just under the fluoro lights, under the blue light all day. He's being hassled. There's probably, and maybe he still didn't want to be there, but because he knew that it was just a short period of time, did he gain a lot from that? I guess that's the question.
I definitely think he gained some things from it. I wouldn't say a lot, but he definitely gained some things from it. And, one, it was the first job he'd ever had, partially because the age he was, when he was 16, COVID was happening. So that's when you can really get a job in the US, and he couldn't get one then. And then we moved to Uruguay. So there wasn't really a job, that he could have that was obvious. So it was the first job he ever had, actually. So he just the basic things about what it means to have a job, showing up on time and all that. And he has no issues with being punctual anyway. But the expectations of the employer and how sometimes they can be ridiculous. He learned that too. He said that actually the biggest thing he learned about it is how poor people were, because he was some of his coworkers were talking, they would talk about money, and he realized these like dire straits that some of the people he worked with were in, just how awful it was. And sometimes people would come in and to buy things, and this is an office supply shop, and then they would see how much it is, and they'd be like, oh my God, you see shock in their face by the price of it, and you'd see, or people that had to put stuff away because to get it under their budget or whatever. And so he learned a lot about more other people's experiences. I mean, I grew up in a very poor house. He did not grow up in a very poor house, but so he maybe hasn't been exposed to as many of those things as possible. The reality of people that just don't have money for things that they need. And so I think that exposure was probably, the biggest thing he took from it, exposure to like normal people and how they were living their lives and how hard it was. So, and I'm sure there were some other positive things along the way. But ultimately, he really hated that job. Like he preferred delivering pizzas to that job, let's just say, because at least he got to be outside.
That's right. Yeah. I guess one of the probably big takeaways in hindsight is he realized that he hated it and he's going to do everything he can to possibly avoid going back to a situation like that. Would that be fair?
Yeah, that's 100%. That's for sure true. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Good reason to go out and do a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, we do talk about jobs in the book, and we say, hey, like dead-end jobs can be really useful to you at times, because during that time when he had that job at Office Depot, and it was only like 7 weeks he worked there, okay, because we move in these cycles, it's 3 months, it moves pretty fast. It was only like 7 weeks, but he saved $5,000. Well, that $5,000 easily paid for his EMT. It kind of, it paid for his next stuff. I mean, he started off this entire thing. One of the objections people get is that, oh yeah, that sounds fun, but that must be very expensive to do all this. It's definitely, if you do everything, it's not cheap. It's about $73,000 if you did everything in the book over 4 years. But it's not something.
How much is the college degree though?
Basically 1 year at a good college can cost you that much.
Okay.
So
you're getting like 100 to 1,000 times the value of college for a quarter of the price. In the same time.
At the end of it, you're able to do something, which is very different than college. You might know some things that you think are valuable, but as again, someone who's hired a lot of people, anyone right out of college, first thing you have to do is train them. They didn't know how to do anything.
It sort of comes back to that statement I read in the intro when I was paraphrasing yourself. It looked like it was a failure, or it looked like I was failing until I was rich, basically. I guess like when people are going through those things, they may not be able to connect to the dots, and they may think, oh, that's a waste of money getting your pilot's license or something could go in fighting, becoming an EMT. But the character that develops, and for really such a small cost in the scheme of things, when you look back in hindsight, like, yes, it seems like a lot of money, but I think those takeaways are really going to help, shape the course of someone's life, especially with AI coming in now, just even within our own company. like I can do the job of 4 different specialized people talking to AI for 2 to 4 hours a day at the moment. Like went from not knowing what to do to like a lot of contracts and stuff, from like 0 income within the first 3 months to like a lot of income, and all because of AI. But if it, like I hadn't stacked those skills, it wasn't just that as well. It's like sales, customer service, being able to engage with different parties, even just to be able to email in a professional way, for example, or to be able to pick up the phone and say, yes, we can do that. But also what you're saying, when you become competent and dangerous, you can say no. Like, no, we can't do that. Instead of having a new early business and thinking, we really need that contract to be able to make payroll next month or next quarter. We don't have the capacity to do that. We can't do that. This is what we can do. This is what we're offering. This is the price that it is. Yes, we'll talk with you. We'll work with you, but we're not going to shortchange ourselves to be able to provide this service and go backwards for it. But like whatever it is, I think when you become competent and dangerous and use these skills that we have with AI, I think it can change people's lives very quickly. But what are your thoughts in regards to AI coming in and how it's going to shape just like the traditional career? Because I agree with yourself as well. I don't think college for the majority of people, like, yes, if you want to become a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer, sure, go, like, be my guest, do it. But I think for the majority of people that get a piece of paper and they're not even employed in that job 5-10 years later, how do you think AI is going to change the way we live, we work, we have fulfillment in life?
Well, I don't know about the fulfillment part. That's a harder question. But I will say that I think that virtually everyone who's enrolled in university now is going to be extremely angry when they get out, because they're going to realize that the jobs that they thought would be there are just not going to be there. And I think it's going to be the biggest rug pull on young people ever. And I think we're already starting to see it. There was an article in the New York Times maybe 3 weeks ago that talked about 2 people who graduated with degrees in computer science. Neither one of them are able to find a job after doing thousands of applications. You know, one guy had over 5,000 applications, had 13 interviews, 0 offers. And that's computer science, you know? So it's like, what about the people who are, get a degree in English, you know? I mean, I think it's going to be a huge rug pull, and I think it's going to lead to a lot of social tension, as if we could have more social tension in the U.S., but I think it's going to be rough. And I also think that longer term, AI it's hard to explain, but this is really like the Industrial Revolution as it hit America. It was highly destructive. Going into it, something like 57% of all Americans were farmers in the late 1870s, roughly, is when it kicked off in the United States. Today, less than 1% of the people in the U.S. are farmers. But 1%. Most of that bulk of loss, 1%, 1% are farmers today.
Yeah.
And so I think that the white-collar job is the equivalent of a farmer during the last Industrial Revolution. So I think that the white-collar job is going to go the way of the small-scale farmers, honestly, and it will be 1%. Will it be in, the Industrial Revolution really, over like 50 years, most of the damage was done. And that, I think this will be a lot more compressed. I think it'll probably occur over about 15 years. So I think it's going to be incredibly damaging to our expectations about what a career is. I think it's going to be really damaging to that. At the same time, there are amazingly wonderful things that came out of the Industrial Revolution, like cinema came out of that. I mean, you could say urban design came out of that. So lots of things that we certainly. I mean, obviously you have all of the consumer products, from the iron to the toaster and stuff like that. That were like, the iron actually made the biggest difference, by the way, in America at first. That was the most popular thing, the electric iron. But these things dramatically changed and improved people's lives, but it destroyed many lives along the way, and they had to completely readjust. And so I think that the people going through university now, or who have exited in the last 5 years, are in for a lot of damage, because not only will they get the rug pull on the employment front, but they've also got this debt that they're saddled with. In the U.S., you can't file for bankruptcy and you can have your debt wiped away, but not student loans. You're stuck with them. And this is why a slavery system, I mean, you talked about slavery earlier, the cogs, I mean, it really is. I mean, you're an indentured servitude to if nothing else, the debt repayments on your student loans.
Yeah. I employ 3 people with their doctorate, and at least 2 of them have student loan debt and stuff, and gave one of them a bonus and said there's like a half of this has gone to tax. And she's like, oh, that's all right. Like that'll just pay off the student loan. And I'm like, that sucks. Like that truly sucks. So with this, I guess one of the most important cycles is probably the entrepreneur cycle, to be able to take self-agency and to be able to go out and provide value. If the traditional landscape is changing, the system no longer works as it used to work, or maybe it didn't work as good and it's been failing for a long time, we have to go out and be able to provide value to the world, because it's the only way that we're going to get compensated. That's the only way real value exchanges hands. Is Maxim still going through the entrepreneur cycle, or he's completed it?
He's still going through it, basically goes through the end of the year. And what he's doing in particular is he's doing a precision drone agricultural business, partially because he's here in Uruguay right now. We live on a regenerative cattle ranch. We live in a semi-rural area, so it's kind of what the opportunities are a little bit different. But and will he succeed? Will his business be successful in 3 months? I mean, you think of it as a guy who's built a lot of businesses. 3 months is a lot of times you're like too soon to say. But you do see whether or not it has potential during that time period. And you learn the process of identifying the product, identifying the market, generating leads, selling the product, delivering the product. And for him, there's a twist to it because he's got to do it all in Spanish, which is another thing he learned along the preparation, a second language. So it's a little bit even more difficult for him than it would otherwise be for an entrepreneur. But yeah, he's still early in it. I mean, he's really, technically it was supposed to start October 1st. So he got a couple weeks early start on it for this one, because of timing. So we got a couple weeks early start on it. But yeah, he's doing it through the end of the year. We'll see how far he gets.
I saw a video of the drone, and it's hard really to be able to tell from the video, but the drone looks ginormous. Can you talk a little bit of what's the carrying capacity and stuff? It looks like one of those ones where you could probably hang on to it and fly around if someone was steering.
If there weren't so many sensors on it, I think you probably could. It can kind of detect when people are around it. But I mean, its payload is only 50 kilos, but it can clearly carry more than that, because it does that in a zero problem whatsoever. So yeah, its payload is 50 kilos. I mean, you see these, I don't know if you saw the videos of all the drones in New Jersey when there was that little freak out earlier in this year. Well, we had this drone thing where there were drones spotted all over New Jersey. No one knew what they were, and people were like, it's UFOs or whatever. To me, having seen this thing, we first fired it up at night. I'm like, this explains it. Totally. Like, this could definitely be it.
Yeah.
It's big and scary. Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and what's the point of it? I'll try link that video below that you had on X. Like, it's incredible. The searchlight, it just turns night to day straight away. Yeah. There's just this thing coming in. It's pretty incredible. But what's he doing with this drone, out of curiosity? What's the point of this amazing machine? Because it doesn't look cheap.
No, it's not cheap. It's not cheap. And truthfully, he's in debt on that one to me. Like, the truth is, I wanted one for our ranch, because...
So he paid for your toy?
He's in debt for my toy. Yes, so he hasn't paid yet. I mean, I'm his dad, so I'm giving him terms.
Smart move.
Yeah, but no interest, but terms. So but basically what it does, it allows you to spread seeds and fertilizer, and seeds is the big thing, honestly, more than anything else. But so the ranch is regenerative, but there's certain parts that could use some overseeding, and so it's just targeted areas. It also has there's another drone that goes along with it that is does this multispectral mapping, and it can tell you a lot about the land. It can tell you basically the biomass that you've got on there. So if you're, we have this intense rotational grazing thing, and so you can understand whether or not you're overgrazing them or undergrazing them in certain parts that they're in. It tells you about the soil health, like it can detect whether there's low nitrogen levels, for instance. These drones are like, I love drones anyway. Like, I like them, so this is no surprise why this is kind of my toy. Although it really won't be my toy until he goes to Thailand and for his fighter thing, then I'll really see what I can do. But I've only ever had the camera drones. But what they do commercially, it's actually amazing what these things can do. I mean, they are really, really advanced. They can do some cool stuff.
Yeah, I had one of those DJIs or whatever, and we look out at the reef and the islands and stuff. But I just took it off from the house up the beach, I'd connected my phone into these, like, you just put your phone into these VR type goggles and stuff. And I was flying 7 kilometers away, couldn't see anything, getting chased by this big sea eagle on the beach.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's not legal, so this never happened, ladies and gentlemen. But the capacity for, like, this was just a toy, like an entry, maybe not entry level. I think it was like $2,500 or whatever it was. So it was a nice toy. But then to see that machine that you've had, and I've seen them slinging like concrete bags and stuff in China, just really amazing what people can do. I wanted to touch on the entrepreneur cycle a little bit and then dive into sort of the practicality of what Maxim's doing, is just to give people ideas, because the world's changing, and it's changing pretty rapidly, and it's getting pretty quick. And you can either sit there in despair and get scared, or you can just go out and you can just do shit, as Bitcoiners say. You can just try something new and fail forward to be able to do it. As we get to the top of the hour, Matt, I'm going to link the book below. It's so incredible. If I'm no longer a young man, I'm no longer a kid. I read it on Kindle. I actually want to talk to you. I'd love a signed copy. I don't care how much I need to pay for it to be able to get it. The only condition is hopefully you'll accept Bitcoin for it.
Of course, accept Bitcoin. Well, yeah, in a month or 2 weeks, we have a conference here. So Max, Doug, and I will all be together. So we'll be able to sign some then, and I'll get one to you.
And whereabouts is that for everyone?
The conference, it's in Uruguay. It's basically how to live and invest in Uruguay. We talk about residency, like Plan B stuff, which we mentioned before we started recording. Yeah.
I think that's so important. I know we only have an hour. We'll have to get you back on to be able to talk about that as well. Maybe even yourself and Doug together. I'd love to speak to Maxim. It's very inspiring what he's doing. But I just want to hand over the floor to you. I don't want to hold you up too much. I know you're a busy man. Just take a couple of moments to be able to share a lesson or a little bit of advice, or just a message for the audience that they can take away and run with, hopefully.
Yeah, sure. I mean, because you're talking about the entrepreneurship category, one of the hardest things, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. It's been very good to me, but involved lots of failure along the way. You know, I've won some, lost some, still have some, sold some, is the way I look at it. The thing is that when you're young, you really don't know. It's really hard to figure out a business because you have so little understanding of the world. And so you don't really understand what the needs of the customers are. You don't really realize the pain points they have. So it's very difficult for you to figure out what would effectively solve those problems. And your ideal customer are not people like you who don't have any money. Your ideal customer is somebody who could afford something of value that you can make a profit in delivering to them. So the best thing you can do is go out in the world and get experience. Get exposure to the real world, like get intensely involved in different things. Along the way, I recommend building some actual skills, but most importantly is just to get exposure to how the world really works and the exposure to people that you would never otherwise interact with. And for young people in particular, I think it's a big problem is they feel, well, they really are isolated from the older generation. In fact, if anything, they might see the older generation as the problem, which is dangerous. Yeah. And in fact, what they'd learn is that a lot of older people would actually be delighted to help a young, motivated, intelligent, resourceful person succeed. What you learn as you get older, I'm 50 now, I turned 50 this year, is that you have, you spend the whole first part of your life saying yes to every opportunity that comes your way. And I don't know when that tipping point is, but there's some point where you have to say no to a hell of a lot more than you say yes to. And eventually it gets to a point where you basically have to say no to virtually everything. And so the opportunities that you have that are table scraps for you as an older person are gigantic opportunities for a young person. And but you'll never get exposed to them if you don't befriend older people, if you don't believe that they have something to teach you, if you don't, try and provide value to them in some way. So I think the key is to get deeply involved in learning stuff. Get off the phone, go out and learn actual things. And if you don't know what to learn, we have 16 things in here that specifically we highlight, but we have lots of other activities that we encourage to do. And it will be a worthwhile use of your time to do any one of these things. If you don't have 4 years to do it, maybe you're out of college already and realize that didn't work. So you can't really afford that time that you lost again. I still think there's a lot still. If you did 2 or 3 cycles, I think you would have such a better understanding of how the world actually works and how you can successfully interact with it, how you can step into it and create value, build businesses, solve people's problems. But the problem most people have today is they actually don't have any actual competency in anything.
Yeah.
They might have a lot of ideas. They might have a strong point of view about stuff, but if a car breaks down, they don't know what to do. If someone gets injured around them, they don't know what to do. If someone asks them to drive a car with a stick, they don't know what to do. Literally nothing. Most people don't know how to do anything anymore because our economy is, hyper rationalized and efficient, that we're allowed to be, ultra specialized into nothingness. Our job is to be a consumer, and that's what most people, that's what we've been shaped to be, consumers. And there's zero value in being a consumer. You're taking, not creating. And so you got to get real world experience doing something. And it also will give you confidence that you can't possibly get, even if you have really strong opinions and a good attitude or whatever. Knowing how to do something really changes your life.
I agree. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll link Matt below as well as the book. And just a couple more things. I was reading Alex Hormozi's $100 million offers. This book was recommended straight after as what to read next. And I think that was an incredible follow-on, but the algorithm has started pushing it. You've sold, can I say how many copies that you've sold so far?
Sure.
So 8,000 copies are out there. That's 8,000 lives of people reading the book that are going to change in a dramatic way, whether they go through it or not. Just even some of the reading lists or the academic lessons within it are just such a huge takeaway. So if you're not happy with where you are in life, male or female, young or old, there is something in this book. It's truly amazing. And what have you got to lose? It's going to cost you a little bit of money and a little bit of time, but I dare say everyone's going to take something out of it that will profoundly impact their lives. It truly is a life-shaping, life-defining book. I couldn't encourage you enough to be able to get it. But Matt, it's been an absolute pleasure and honor to be able to have you here today. For everyone out there, please do something nice for yourself today. For somebody else out there, be blessed. Peace.